The final section of the nervous system, we will cover the special senses. Special senses are olfaction, your sense of smell, gustation, your sense of taste, your sense of vision, and hearing and equilibrium. We compare the special senses to what we would call general senses. General senses are your cutaneous senses in your skin, the senses that you have in your muscles and joints, as well as your senses that are internal or visceral senses. For example, monitoring blood pressure or monitoring blood chemistry. So special senses are located in your head. They're not scattered throughout the body like general senses. They also involve more complicated structures, for example, an eyeball for vision and an ear for hearing and equilibrium, are much more complicated than, say, a touch sensor or a pain sensor in your skin. We're going to begin with probably the easiest special sense, which is our sense of smell or olfaction. Your sense of smell is one of the two chemical senses, the other being your sense of taste. So what we obviously see here is the nasal cavity, which contains what is known as the olfactory epithelium. The olfactory epithelium, as you can see, is only located in the upper parts of your nasal cavity. A lot of that superior nasal concha is covered with the olfactory epithelium, but none of these areas below have neurons that can detect chemicals. So olfaction is a chemical sense. The chemical that will stimulate these neurons are known as odorants, and there's a number of different odorants in the environment. These odorants enter the nasal cavity and must dissolve in a thin layer of mucus or serous secretion. This secretion is produced by glands in the olfactory epithelium, known as olfactory glands. Once that molecule dissolves in the mucus, it stimulates little hairs called cilia on the neurons. The neurons are known as olfactory receptor cells. Once those chemicals stimulate the neurons, this neuron will fire an action potential. And the action potentials, as we know, will travel down the axons. And these axons of the olfactory receptor cells go through the cribriform plate of the ethmoid bone through little holes called olfactory foramina. And then these olfactory receptor cells synapse with neurons found in the olfactory bulb of the olfactory nerve, which is cranial nerve 1. And those neurons will then transmit this information eventually to the area of your cerebral cortex that will allow you to perceive smell, which is known as your olfactory area. So the take-home message here is that olfaction is a chemical sense. It involves olfactory receptor cells, which are the neurons. There are also some cells known as supporting cells. These cells are just epithelial cells, which help support the neurons. You'll also notice there are some basal cells. Basal cells are a type of stem cell, which can differentiate and become olfactory receptor cells. So your sense of smell might adapt. It might change as you age due to the production of new olfactory receptor cells. Looking on the next slide, we see the Neuro Pathway. Starting in the olfactory epithelium, transmitting through the cribriform plate of the ethmoid bone, entering the olfactory bulb, transmitting down what's called the olfactory tract, and then eventually to the primary olfactory area in the cerebral cortex. Notice that this pathway does not involve the thalamus. The thalamus is this area of the brain, which we know acts as a sensory relay area of the brain. But your sense of olfaction bypasses or does not go through the thalamus. In the next video, we're going to talk about the second chemical sense, our sense of taste or gustation.